Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Angela, and today I have with me Malisa Hepner, and she is from Oklahoma, and she's an author, she's a podcast host of the Emotionally Unavailable podcast. She overcame an extensive history of childhood trauma only to get well into adulthood before realizing trauma's significant lasting impact. I think that happens to a lot of us. She reached burnout in every area of her life and experienced profound darkness. Deciding to give healing one more chance, she began moving the pieces of her life. She quit her job, started a podcast, and opened a private practice, and she is now teaching others how to rid themselves of shame and find unconditional love for themselves and each other. So, welcome to the podcast, Malisa.
Thank you. I love your accent. Where are you?
I am in Saskatchewan, Canada.
Okay. I thought it was Canadian, but Wisconsin sounds kind of similar.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, absolutely. I know that just from reading a little bit more about you, I found out that, you've been through some major trauma and you've been through grief and you have overcome this and somehow created this wonderful service to others through it. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's how people transform their lives through some really challenging things. And so tell us a little bit about your challenges and how you got to where you are today.
okay. Well, first of all, I'm really so grateful that you've had me on. I love sharing my life with others, and that's kind of what I'm doing is trying to get my story out there to as many people as possible just to share hope. So basically, my childhood was crazy because both of my parents were addicts. I think most people, I was born in 1980, and I think outside of the addict part of things, I feel like there was a lot of parts of my childhood that most of us experienced, like just kind of everyday trauma that like a lot of us weren't really necessarily aware of.
Right.
Just because, we were raised by a generation that was pretty emotionally unavailable. And if, I understand that. That's a whole other subject, but you know what I mean.
Mhm.
So my parents were very young, and I was not the first child. My dad had a child with someone before he met my mom, and then they had my older brother, me, and a younger brother, all a year apart. Like
Wow.
May of 79, June of 80, August of 81. So I think my mom was 17 when my older brother was born. And so, like, very young and very ill equipped emotionally, financially,
Mm.
physically. Um, and so, like, I was in the hospital with a failure to thrive diagnosis at 2 months old because of things like putting orange juice in my bottle instead of formula. Like,
Wow.
really extreme levels of neglect, and then later on, physical abuse too. Not like all the time or super consistently, but my mother was the one who was physically abusive with me, and I was the only one of us that she was physically abusive with. And that obviously had an impact. But it was really the chaos of their addictions that created so much trauma because it was very inconsistent. You just never knew which version of them was going to show up. My dad was more of an opiate user and kind of a chill guy. So what he did was he just chose to put a lot of space between us because we would go back and forth between at first in really early childhood. And I did have a removal once and had to go live with like foster parents for almost a year, I think. Um, but we did a lot of back and forth between grandparents and parents, and then eventually just mom and grandma because my parents divorced and then my grandparents ended up divorcing later. But just a lot of chaos. So, and then because of my mom leaving us with random strangers and who then also left us, I experienced sexual abuse in childhood too. So there was just like There really honestly wasn't a day from birth to 18 that wasn't filled with chaos, because even after my mom relinquished custody for good when I was 8 years old, there she was always around. She was that mom that's like, those are my babies. And she did not care about what she was exposing us to when she showed up messed up. My grandma was an enabler, so she'd send us off to have a visitation. Maybe she wasn't sober. Like there was just a lot of that. And then as we got older and things happened, the chaos was inside of our home because my brothers were living their pain very loudly. And I was internalizing everything, but they were now the chaos in my home. When I was 15, my dad died of a morphine overdose. And I had had lost before, but nothing that was super close to me. I had a great grandpa who took his own life on Christmas Eve when I was 8.
Wow.
But I had only met him a few times, and as much as like I loved those visits, it just didn't really impact me. But obviously, losing your dad is a whole different story. And so, really, the theme around that part of my life was fighting for the space to grieve that loss because I wasn't being raised by him. I'm surrounded by people who feel like that means it probably doesn't impact you as much. So I was kind of like balancing those themes with what I also knew to be was real pain. And then I also had a grandma who hated him and made grieving him really painful because she didn't want to see it. And so she just kind of dismissed any of that and felt, I think, the way maybe my teenage peers felt, which was like, well, but he wasn't raising you. And
Mhm.
so really just experiencing the need to defend the fact that I'm in pain. Like it's my dad, whether I was seeing him every day or not. And truly, those last couple of years, but particularly the last 6 months, we were making a very concerted effort to repair our relationship. And so, like, it came right at a time where I enjoyed spending time with him, whereas before I didn't, because I was like fueled with anger for him, mostly because of my grandma, but still. I was just coming to this place of peace with him, and then he died, and he died 10 days after his 38th birthday on Valentine's Day. So it was just this whole traumatic event. And then I spent the next 3 years trying to cope with that. My brother's crazy behavior. I mean, my older brother had hospitalizations, um, boot camp for bad kids, things like that, like just
Mhm.
being sent to all kinds of places and multiple attempts on his life. Like it was just a really sad time. And then at 18, I moved out within a few months, met my ex-husband, who I married within like a year and a half, because that was going to solve every issue I had. Uh, Fast forward to I'm 22, married, pregnant with my first child, and I lost my mom to complications from cirrhosis and hepatitis C. We also found out during that hospitalization she was actually HIV positive as well, but we weren't aware of that prior, and I don't think she was either. And she had actually been incarcerated when she ended up in the hospital, which was unrelated, but that's its own set of trauma. I had to learn later. It was, oh, that's traumatic for your mom to be in prison. Had no idea. It was all just
Oh,
so commonplace for me. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
so, yeah, just kind of wrapping all of that up in this little bow where I was like, okay, that was then and this is now. And with her dying while I was pregnant too, the only thing I wanted on this earth was to be better than them. So like my whole focus now is bringing this life into the world and being 100% better than what I received. And so having had no idea with how to cope with this loss, I just kind of shoved it to the side, got ready for this baby, and then that's why I ended up in this profound darkness, was all those years of just cramming stuff down and not understanding why I was what I was and behaved the way I did and felt the way I did all the time.
Mhm.
And now I'm here on the other side of that, still actively, figuring out my tools
Mhm.
and accessing them differently, getting more expanded levels of consciousness, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That is heartbreaking and so amazing that you're here, that you're
Thank
here
you.
talking to me. Um, and yeah, so what helped you um, through all of this? How did you get here? Because there's so many circumstances there that would have taken someone out.
I
How
I
did you get
probably
through it?
have a really simple answer for that. I think one thing was that I got sent really good people along the way. Like I had a really good social worker that I'm still friends with to this day that really just was like this voice of reason, and she could break through this barrier with me where, because my grandma really had a lot of narcissistic tendencies. I'll call her a narcissist, but the more peace I make with her, because I lost her 10 years ago on Valentine's Day, also, just so you know.
Oh my goodness.
I know, isn't that nuts? And I had a
Oh,
great grandma that died on Valentine's Day too. I'm like, good God with this holiday. But so as I've like learned to make peace with our relationship and whatever very recently, like in the last 6 months, like I feel a little bit less like fiery about being like, and my grandma was a narcissist. But she
right,
was. I mean, she was, and bless her, she had her own set of stuff. I'm releasing the anger about that truly, but she was, and so there was that um aspect to deal with. But what it did is it made me, I didn't really even see where I could complain about her, but even if I wanted to vent about her, I would never, because I was terrified. Like she kind of like, you don't talk about me. You know what I mean? And so
right,
my social worker, when she was planting these little seeds with me, she never criticized my grandma. And that would have been very important because like that was separate. Let's talk about me. My grandma's different. You know what I mean? So
right.
it's like she met me where I was truly, which is a tenet of social work. But so that was very helpful. I have a mentor that came into my life when I was 13, still friends. I actually do contract with her now. Like she,
Mm,
like she'll be like, I have she has a therapy agency and she'll send me clients. Like I got sent really good people, but I can remember being 4 years old, lying in my bed and crying so hard because I was missing my mom. Because she would just go off on these little ventures to California and, like just doing whatever it was she did when she was on a bender. And I would just be missing her, even though I really didn't in some ways, because she was so abusive to me, and it just seemed like my presence was just too much for her. um I Obviously you're gonna miss like the parts. I missed being nurtured by her. Like I, even though I didn't ever really receive that, I wanted that. I was craving her, I guess is a
right,
better way to say it.
right.
And so I remember crying so hard, and this would happen a lot. And one night I just had this like thing come over me that was like, this is your purpose. Like, you're going to experience these things and you're going to use this pain as purpose. And I don't remember what the words would have been at 4 years old, but I knew I was experiencing these things for a reason. I think some of it, even though like full transparency, I have left every form of religion that I used to practice, but there was a faith there. And I think even when that transformed into spirituality, it's the same type of faith that none
Right,
of this is happening on accident.
right.
And then even so that happened at 4, and then when I was in 8th grade, I was at lunch, and we had this thing called the student store where you could either eat in the cafeteria and eat whatever they served, or you could go out to like the gym area and they had like you could buy hot pockets or nachos or whatever. And obviously that's what I was going to eat. So that's where I was. I was standing in line, and because it was connected to the gym, I, maybe the ninth graders or the seventh graders were getting like a motivational speaker there, and I think it was just
Okay.
like Miss Oklahoma or something. And I looked at her. I will remember this for the rest of my life, but I turned my head, I looked at her, watched what she was doing, and I had a vision of me doing the same thing. And I had this like download of like,
Mhm.
okay, and this was 8th grade. My dad died when I was in 10th grade, but it was like, your parents are going to die. this is going to happen, like, and then your story's about to get a lot bigger and much more powerful. But remember, like, that's intentional. Like, you're going to use this. Hey, listen, I'll be the first to say maybe it's a coping, like, maybe it was whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, that was my north, was like, none of this is happening for no reason,
Right.
And so even now with my spirituality, I just know I have a belief that the things are happening for me and not to me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important to get through challenges, to really know and understand that. And somehow we seem to be gifted with that
Hmm.
knowledge or wisdom somewhere along the way in some way, shape, or form. And when it happens, we just know it. And
Yeah.
it brings such peace for us when we are going
Yes.
through so much. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think that was honestly my period of real bad darkness was probably in an in-between place before I got to where I am spiritually, but after I had left religion. So
Mm,
there was all this blank space of like, then what am I doing? Like, what is this? And I was really leaned into the fact that, like, I am such a reactive person. I have been that way since childhood because outwardly I would freeze or fawn. So I'm internalizing everything. So I'm a hair's trigger, right? Like, I'm
right.
very explosive. And to most people, it wasn't a very big, like, you know, it wasn't that much, but the people who were the closest to me, especially my spouse, like, I've just always been really loud with my spouses because I'm, on my second marriage now. But like with my grandma, she's the one who really nailed me to that cross of shame,
Mm,
because she'd be like, you are so mean, you are such a mean person. And then as we got older and she loved to, compare my siblings and me, your brother's a nicer person than you, he's a better person than you, he has a heart of gold and your heart is dark and you are just ugly on the inside, and
mm,
blah 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 blah. Like, the worst things you can say to the one person on this earth who is literally doing everything they can to gain your approval, just tearing me down thread by thread. And
mhm.
so I took those and really internalized that, as any child would. But
Yeah.
I just had this narrative like, I am mean. And I think the way that would translate to most people, though, once I started this work on myself, what I realized is we're all walking around believing ourselves to be too much and or not enough. I kind of was both. I'm like, I'm too much and not enough. That's so cute how I can do that.
Yeah.
But I think too, like, at our core, we feel fundamentally unlovable. And so working through that was the biggest part, and just understanding, like, I was hating myself because I wasn't perfect. I couldn't accept these parts of myself for what they were, and really just understand, like, well, you react this way because of this. And so that was a really big turning point for me, was just like understanding what was causing that stuff. But what I was saying was that in between, it was hard for me because it felt very hopeless, because I didn't
Yeah.
see the
Mhm.
point anymore. I no longer had the roots that I had in religion, and I had not yet gotten grounded in spirituality. So I was really just kind of floating and trying to figure out, like, then what's the point?
Right.
What is the
Mhm.
point? If all of this is just for suffering, I'm done suffering, because I was suffering because I was a victim to my own mind.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And we may refer that to the dark night of the soul or some other terminology, but I know I went through something similar when I lost my husband, and it was a lot of questioning, big questions about why am I here? Why did all of this happen? What am I supposed to
Hmm.
do now? Is there any, yeah, is this the way it's going to be for the rest of my life? Is there any point in even living? It's like all of those
Yes.
questions, right? Yeah, that's hard. Hmm.
Yeah, I really resonate with those questions. probably I haven't even considered those in so long, but yeah, I remember thinking like, okay, even at the tail end of like what I really call the pinnacle of a mental health crisis during that time, and I absolutely say it was my dark night, but at the tail end where I'm like looking for any sort of light, I had a little intro into my spirituality, and I just thought to myself, okay, but excuse, I don't want to exist to suffer to
Mhm.
show others how to overcome suffering. Like,
Right.
I'm so sorry, but I am done with the suffering. So, like,
Mhm.
universe, source, whatever word you want me to use here, this needs to stop. I remember just being like, I know that's not my only purpose, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about your mind and how you can just um, become almost it overpowers you. It's making up things that and trying to keep you safe, but if you don't understand that, and
Mm-hmm.
it can really create some havoc in your life and really take over. And even to this day, me knowing what the mind does, I still get into those spirals sometimes and have a hard time
Yeah.
getting out of it.
Absolutely. And I love that you say that out loud because for so long, like I was just saying the other day, like I need to change the way I'm marketing myself because oftentimes what we get guilty of is being like, I used to think this and now I think this, or I used to act this way and now I act this way. No, straight up, sometimes I'm still really awful to my husband. And sometimes I still scream at my kids. Like, I just started my period today and I have PMDD. So you give me a little case of PMS and the
Yeah.
overthinking will kick in. And it's a constant struggle to be like, we are not doing this. Yesterday
Mhm.
morning, I woke up in the worst mood and I knew I was like minutes away from starting. And so, like, I'm doing my best. But I went down this path of like, because I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go wash my face, get ready for the day, blah, blah, blah. But I wanted to go grab something from the kitchen. I went into the kitchen. I saw a sink full of dishes, instantly pissed. Now I'm going to stop and wash the dishes, truly from a very martyred place, if I'm being honest.
Mm.
Some of it was because I just wanted it to be done. Because, listen, my husband will take hours to do it and not even do it well. That's just the truth of it. And so I was like, okay, if I do this might help. It didn't help. So then I'm back to the original task of getting ready. And I was getting ready and I was like, okay, are you done, honey? Because I this doesn't feel good. Because I was in my brain, like, yeah. And then I swear to you, if he doesn't learn how to da da da, like I'm just over
Yeah.
here, blah, 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 and myself up, right? And then I was like, okay, will you let yourself go a little bit? You ready to rein it back in and go have a better day? And I did. I had a beautiful day. Like I would say yesterday was so good.
Yeah.
But, oh, used to, that would have taken 3 days of my life away. I'm so serious because that would have gone all day
Yep.
into the night, and I would have woken up the next day ready to fight again for 3 days.
Yeah. 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 And you just touched on it a little bit there, talking to yourself and almost, I envision myself almost putting my arm around myself and saying, okay, you know what? I see what's
Yes.
happening here, and I understand. And I know why you're like this because, XYZ, and it's okay. And, but it takes practice to do that. You don't just, we don't learn that. When we're growing up. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that, and I think prior, I was relying on what little self control and discipline we have in any given 24-hour period to say
Right.
things like, you know better. So I'm
Right.
just coming in with more judgment
Mm,
instead of compassion.
right.
Like, and that gets you, it's a form of resistance. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you just get really stuck in that moment because now I'm going to rebel against myself. You know better. Oh, I'll show you. I know better. Like that's the whole thing. I would just get, start a whole new cycle of just conflict within myself.
Yep.
Whereas now, absolutely, I'm coming in from a place of unconditional positive regard for myself. Like, it's still scary for me to talk about that part out loud because we are taught that you're not accountable if you're willing to be like, I'm real good at being a human. I
Yeah.
got that part down real good. I am so far from perfect that I have to be one of the best humans on here because I am doing this real good. But it's true. That's where I'm at with myself. Now, do I feel guilty for things? Yeah. And that's how we go, okay, let me reflect. What will I do different next time? Not, why did I do that? Oh my gosh, I know better, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, okay, I don't like the way that feels. So maybe next time we could try this tool. Or did we actually use the tool appropriately? You know, things like that. But that's all love. That's acceptance. That's compassion. But when you can give that to yourself, that's when you can give it to others and you start to see people as you and you as them and you understand how really connected we all are because maybe it looks different on the outside but we're all doing and feeling the exact same things.
Yeah.
So I didn't used to offer that level of compassion to other people either, hence me hanging on to this hatred for my grandma for so long. Rightfully so. I told myself I was going to hold on to that as long as I wanted to or felt like I needed to or whatever. And I did. And told myself for the last few years, you'll get there when you get there. And if you don't, that's okay. We're still going to love ourselves anyway. But when I finally saw how I was exactly like her and I was doing things from that same place of fear and shame, how can I not then extend that compassion that I'm giving to myself?
Mhm.
Some people don't, and that's okay. This is not meant to trigger anybody. If you're not there yet, that is totally fine. But for me, it has been such a journey of peace to be able to offer that to myself and others, to look at them and just see the humanity in them, but see that soul too that doesn't want to respond this way. Not that that's going to be like an excuse for abusive behavior or whatever, but I'm also not going to hate myself over somebody else's behavior the way I used to would have, you know?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, shame, let's talk about shame because I think the way I understand it, shame is the lowest vibration that you can. And we all go through this at some point, and it
Mm-hmm.
gets so bad that, we don't want to talk about it because, well, we're in shame.
Yeah.
And so tell me more about, what that looks like and how you can help people with that.
So my journey with shame was kind of interesting because I was very unaware of it. Like it was just very much woven into the fabric of who I was because of all of that terrible programming. So what really helped me, after I started my podcast, I met somebody, and this actually changed everything for me. Like my entire world changed at this point. Because I didn't start my private practice till after this, because then I was like okay enough to where I'm like I can help others again. But I met a lady named Jenny. I can't remember Kimpton. I think she works with a guy named Troy Love, and he has developed a method called the Finding Peace method, and he has a workbook called the Finding Peace workbook.
Hmm.
The workbook breaks down attachment wounding really nicely to where I could start to understand what was coming up when. It's not that I didn't know about those things in theory, but learning to apply them to my own life was very different. But the part that learned how to quiet the noise was he breaks shame down into different archetypes. And you learn how to externalize those archetypes so that you understand this isn't you, this is programming you've received. Like, quit calling this your self talk. These are narratives that have been bred into you, and you just have to learn to get them out, look at them for what they are, and then send them on their way. All in love. It's kind of, are you familiar with internal family systems?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Mhm.
To me, I think if I were to guess, he borrowed from IFS with
Mhm.
this. But so like one archetype, my favorite, is called the royal. So the judge, really simple, comes in and says, you knew better than that. why are you doing that? You knew better, right? And that's always my first, like, because I'm a good person. So, like, initially, I'm going to shame myself a little bit, right? Like, why are you doing
Yeah.
that? My royal comes right in. Yeah, but I wouldn't have done that if they hadn't done such and such and such and such. And then the judge comes back and is like, well, but. So now I've got these two archetypes fighting. It took me a minute to be able to like differentiate and see like that is actually what's happening. Before it was just I've got all this chaos in my head and felt like maybe I was schizophrenic because my older brother is schizophrenic and my mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but my brother has full-blown delusions. He's been unmedicated forever and, chronic, but my mom wasn't like him. And one time we had a conversation about it, and the way she described it, I'm like, "Oh, mom, you just had what I have. You know what I mean? Like you had a lot of
Mm,
noise up there." And the way she described it was basically like really negative voices. And I thought I was going crazy because my mom was crazy and now I'm going crazy, right? And
right.
so understanding that each of these archetypes have a function, like the royal is protecting you from feeling that pain when you see their pain reflected back at you. Like what you caused in this other person by the way you just behaved. I'm going to shove that down. And the royal's function is to help you do that. I started to see all the ways we do that as a society too. You hear about a car accident and a child is lost, the first thing we will do is, were they wearing a seatbelt? Well, if you had done this, and
Yeah.
this, or any of those tragedies, we will initially just come right in with a full scale attack on, well, if you hadn't done it this way, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Okay, those things can be true, and someone can be suffering unimaginably also.
Mhm.
So I started to see kind of how I had done this forever and how I was a part of that as like a collective too.
Right.
And then the other ones are really like the rebel was probably my third biggest one, which is the thing that comes in and that's kind of how the only way I could silence all the voices was with the rebel, which was just like shut up, and it gave me permission to just go ahead and unleash everything that was inside, and that's when all the like real verbal attacks would start, like screaming or just saying the worst stuff that you could ever say to your spouse, things like that. But there's also the martyr, really easy, and then there's the impotent one that's just like that super hopeless, depressed guy. But what the book has you do is externalize it and like give each one a character, and it could be a person, it could be an object, it could be whatever. It really helped me. My royal was a cross between like Sally Jesse Raphael and Sylvia Brown. Do you know who both of those women are?
I know Sylvia Brown. Yeah.
Okay, Sally Jesse Raphael was a daytime talk show host.
Okay.
So and yeah, so she was Sylvia Brown without the intuitive gifts and not as throaty, but
Okay.
like very just like Judge Judy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like to me it was just like just that mean old girl, like just and then that was probably the most important one for me because I had to learn how to put her away because the rest I understood them and it was just like, well, of course you're going to shame yourself a little bit if you're not good at not shaming yourself. So the judge, it was like, okay, but it really helped me to just go through and understand what they were trying to protect me from
Mhm.
and then send them off in love. Like it was literally like a thank you for your service, but you can go now because I'm still learning the ways that I've built layer after layer after layer to protect myself. The narratives I was carrying really was about everyone else and how they weren't showing up for me the way I show up for them. Nobody loves me the way I love them. I'm still learning about how I made sure that was the case, like just all those layers.
Wow. Wow. So I know people have got a little taste here now of the knowledge and the wisdom that you have and what you're able to offer. So tell people, how can they get a hold of you? Um, how can they work with you? What?
I'm super active on Instagram at melissa.hepner. I'll say it here. My name is spelt weird, Malisa. Um, that's the easiest because it's got my link tree there to my podcast, to books, to Patreon, all those things. So I'm putting out a monthly workbook to it's kind of a theme for each month. Like my first one was safe to be seen. It's really about you looking at yourself and accepting yourself in order to allow others to see you for who you are and standing in your own authority. And then I have a guide to stop overthinking. And so it's a very step by step, if you're triggered, now what kind of thing. And I had been trying to organize that in my brain for a really long time, like how to put that out. And I had an aha one day and I put that out. And then I've got one to overcome perfection because perfectionist standards are really tricky and they sneak up I'm still learning all the ways in which perfectionism tries to run me over. Um, so why I'm bringing that up is because like I have a Patreon that if you join a certain level of membership, that automatically includes that month's workbook. So those are the things I'm kind of doing. I have a website on there. If you want to work with me one on one, there's like the links to my website is the way to do that. But honestly, I'm just trying to I just give as many tools that are affordable and easy to for the whole like self-healing movement. So because time is valuable for people and I get that it's scary to take a step to work with someone one on one and so I'm just trying to put out as many tools as I can.
Beautiful. You are an angel.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for all that you offer. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
Yeah, I think for an actionable takeaway, I would say that person who really wanted to die because she wasn't perfect and she was spending a lot of time trying to map out a trajectory and when I get there, I'll be this. And you're already all of those things. Like you don't need to try to become someone 100% different than who you are to be worthy of love and belonging. Like you're worthy of love right here, right now, exactly who you are. And maybe you need to unbecome a couple of things. Like that's a thing. We got to learn and we have to grow and we have to evolve, but we don't have to try to change everything about us. And the more I accept exactly who I am, the more I love myself. And that's the vibration you want to be at. That's the best, frequency is love. And I am attracting so many beautiful things into my life just through the act of acceptance and love for myself. So, I know it's tricky and it's hard to see when you're not loving yourself because I was a person who's like, I love myself. But find the tool that clicks for you. If it's the Finding Peace workbook, I'm happy to shout that out to the top of my lungs. That it's not my resource, but you know what? It changed my life.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, keep looking because you're going to find the thing that clicks. There is hope. You just have to get the right information.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time today to do this. And I
Absolutely.
encourage people to find you on Instagram and we'll put the links in the description so people can find you for sure. And just thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I had such a good time.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for listening and bye for now.